When my family sold what they thought was their house for $85,000, they had no idea the new owners would call me within 48 hours, asking why the deed was in my name. What happened next would expose 20 years of assumptions, reveal the truth about who really built our family's wealth, and force everyone to confront the daughter they had systematically underestimated. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Isabella Chen Rodriguez, and at 32 years old I had become an expert at letting people underestimate me. For the past decade, I had watched my family celebrate my brother Miguel's corporate promotions and my sister Elena's medical practice achievements, while treating my real estate investments as a hobby that got out of hand. The irony was suffocating. Every family gathering followed the same script. My parents would beam with pride, discussing Miguel's latest project management certification or Elena's successful surgical procedures. Then the conversation would shift to me with that familiar apologetic tone, as if my presence required explanation or justification to extended family members. Isabella is still figuring out her path, my mother would say, as though I were some 22-year-old recent graduate, rather than a woman who had been systematically building a real estate portfolio worth over $3 million. She buys and sells houses, it keeps her busy. The dismissive phrase, keeps her busy, had become my family's standard description of work that generated more annual income than Miguel's engineering salary and Elena's medical practice combined. Yet the perception persisted that I was the daughter who had never quite found her direction in life. The house they sold, my house, sat on Maple Street in the historic district of our mid-sized city. It was a 1920s craftsman bungalow that I had purchased 6 years earlier when the neighborhood was still considered transitional. The property had required extensive renovation, which I had managed personally while learning every aspect of construction, permitting, and property management. I had bought the house under my legal name, Isabella Chen Rodriguez, using financing that I had secured through my real estate investment company. The mortgage payments came from my business accounts. The property taxes were paid through my corporate structure. Every aspect of ownership was legally and financially documented under my name and my business entities. However, my family had always referred to it as the family house, because they had helped with some of the renovation work and my parents had contributed approximately $8,000 toward the down payment. Their financial contribution represented less than 3% of the total investment I had made in the property, but it had somehow evolved into the assumption that they held ownership stake in the house. The transformation of the Maple Street property had been remarkable. I had spent 18 months coordinating contractors, managing renovations, and overseeing every detail of the restoration process. The original purchase price was $127,000. My total investment in renovations, improvements, and carrying costs exceeded. The property had appreciated significantly as the neighborhood gentrified, and recent comparable sales indicated a current market value approaching $500,000. During the renovation period, my family had provided occasional assistance with painting, landscaping, and minor repairs. Miguel had helped install new light fixtures one weekend. Elena had contributed labor for garden preparation. My parents had assisted with interior painting and had made their financial contribution toward the down payment. Their involvement had been appreciated, but it represented a small fraction of the total investment and effort required to transform the property. I had managed the entire project, coordinated all contractors, handled all permitting and inspection requirements, and assumed all financial risk associated with the renovation. Yet somehow their limited involvement had created the perception that the house was a collaborative family investment rather than my individual business venture. The assumption had been reinforced by their continued involvement in minor maintenance tasks and their tendency to refer to it as our project when discussing the renovation with friends and extended family. I had never explicitly corrected this misconception because it seemed harmless and because I valued my family's involvement in my work. Their pride in the renovation results was genuine, and their assistance had been helpful during the intensive renovation period. However, the legal and financial reality remained unchanged. The house was my property, purchased with my financing and owned through my business entity. The situation had become more complex 6 months earlier when my parents began experiencing financial pressure due to my father's reduced work hours and increased medical expenses. They had mentioned several times that they were considering selling some assets to address their financial challenge. During these discussions, they had referenced the Maple Street house as one of their potential assets, apparently believing that their small financial contribution and renovation assistance had created some form of ownership interest. I had assumed these were casual comments rather than serious intentions and had not addressed the misconception directly. The reality was that my parents had no legal claim to the property. Their financial contribution had been a gift, not an investment, that created ownership rights. Their assistance with renovation work had been voluntary family support, not labor that established legal interest in the property. The house was entirely owned by my business entities, and any sale would require my authorization and signature. However, the family dynamic had created a situation where my parents believed they could make decisions about the property without consulting me. Their assumption was understandable given their limited understanding of my business operations and their tendency to view my real estate activities as informal family ventures rather than professional business investment. The crisis began on a Wednesday morning in September when I received a call from my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had noticed unusual activity at the Maple Street property. She reported that strangers were measuring the yard, taking photographs, and appearing to conduct some form of property assessment. I drove to the property immediately and found a young couple with a real estate agent examining the exterior and taking detailed notes. When I approached them to inquire about their interest in the property, they seemed surprised by my presence and explained that they were the new owners conducting a final walkthrough before closing. The confusion was immediate and alarming. I explained that I was the property owner and that there had been no sale authorized. The real estate agent became defensive and insisted that the sale had been properly executed through the listing agent who had been authorized by the owner. I requested to see the sales contract and was shown documentation that listed my parents as the sellers. The contract included their signatures and indicated that they had provided proof of ownership authorization. However, the legal description and property details clearly identified my house, and the sales price was $4. The young couple, David and Sarah Martinez, were understandably confused and concerned. They had completed all standard due diligence procedures, secured financing, and were prepared to close on the property the following week. Their real estate agent had assured them that all ownership verification had been completed and that the sale was legitimate. I explained the situation as calmly as possible, but the implications were staggering. My parents had somehow initiated the sale of property they did not own, using documentation that had not been properly verified. The real estate agents involved had failed to conduct adequate ownership verification, and the entire transaction was based on false assumptions about property ownership. The immediate challenge was resolving the situation without causing financial harm to the Martinez family, who had acted in good faith throughout the process. They had invested time, money, and emotional energy in preparing to purchase what they believed was legitimately available property. I requested contact information for all parties involved and promised to address the situation immediately. David and Sarah Martinez were disappointed but understanding, recognizing that the ownership confusion was not their fault and that the sale could not proceed without proper authorization. The real estate agents were more defensive, insisting that they had followed standard procedures and that any ownership issues were the responsibility of the sellers to resolve. However, it became clear that their verification process had been inadequate and that they had relied on my parents' assertions without conducting independent confirmation of ownership rights. That evening, I had the conversation with my parents that would forever change our family dynamic. I explained that they had attempted to sell property they did not own and that their actions had created legal and financial complications that needed immediate resolution. Their initial reaction was confusion and denial. They insisted that they had ownership rights based on their financial contribution and renovation assistance. They argued that the house had always been discussed as a family investment and that they had assumed their involvement created legal rights. I presented the actual ownership documentation, including the deed, mortgage records, and tax payment history, all of which clearly established my sole ownership of the property. I explained that their financial contribution had been a gift and that their renovation assistance had been voluntary family support, rather than work that created ownership interests. The conversation was difficult and emotional. My parents struggled to understand how their assumptions about the property had been so fundamentally incorrect. They had genuinely believed that their involvement in the renovation and their financial contribution had created some form of ownership stake. However, the legal reality was unambiguous. The property was entirely owned by my business entities, and any sale required my authorization. Their attempt to sell the house without my knowledge or consent had created serious legal complications, and had potentially exposed them to liability for attempting to sell property they did not own. The situation forced me to confront the broader pattern of my family's assumptions about my business activities and financial capability. Their attempt to sell my property without consultation reflected their fundamental understanding of my professional success and their tendency to view my achievements as collaborative family ventures, rather than individual business accomplishments. The next morning, I began the process of resolving the legal and financial complications created by the unauthorized sale attempt. I contacted all parties involved, including the real estate agents, the Martinez family and their lender, to explain the ownership situation and begin unwinding the transaction. The experience was exhausting and frustrating, but it also provided clarity about the need to establish clear boundaries regarding my business operations and to address my family's misconceptions about my professional capability. The assumption that they could make decisions about my property without consultation revealed the depth of their misunderstanding about my business success and financial independence. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The incident would force conversations that I had been avoiding for years and would ultimately lead to a complete transformation in how my family understood my professional achievements and financial capability. However, the immediate challenge was resolving the current crisis and preventing similar misunderstandings in the future. The house on Maple Street represented more than a real estate investment. It symbolized my ability to identify opportunities, manage complex projects, and create value through strategic planning and execution. The fact that my family had attempted to sell it without my knowledge reflected their continued perception of me as someone whose achievements were somehow accidental or collaborative rather than the result of deliberate business strategy and professional competence. The resolution of this crisis would require not only addressing the immediate legal and financial complications, but also establishing new frameworks for family communication and boundary setting that would prevent similar situations in the future. Most importantly, it would force me to stop accommodating misconceptions about my capabilities and to begin asserting the professional respect that my achievements had earned. The foundation of my real estate empire began in the most unlikely place, a cramped studio apartment above a Korean barbecue restaurant where the smell of grilled meat permeated everything I owned. I was 24 years old, working as a junior marketing coordinator at a mid-sized advertising agency, and earning $32,000 annually while watching my college classmates advance in their careers with what seemed like effortless momentum. My siblings had already established themselves in their respective fields. Miguel had secured a position with a prominent engineering firm immediately after graduation, starting at a salary that exceeded mine by $15,000. Elena had been accepted into a competitive medical residency program, positioning herself for a career that would eventually generate substantial income and social prestige. Meanwhile, I was struggling to afford basic living expenses while trying to understand why my marketing degree seemed to provide so few opportunities for advance. The advertising agency where I worked specialized in campaigns for local businesses, giving me daily exposure to the challenges faced by small and medium-sized enterprises. I observed restaurateurs struggling with inconsistent customer traffic, retailers dealing with inventory management issues, and service providers attempting to build sustainable client relationships without adequate marketing resources. These interactions sparked my interest in understanding business operations beyond the marketing campaigns we developed. I began studying the financial statements and business models of our clients, recognizing patterns in their challenges and identifying opportunities for improvement that extended beyond advertising solutions. The pivotal moment came during a client meeting with Sandra Martinez, who owned a small chain of 3 Mexican restaurants. Sandra was considering closing her least profitable location due to declining revenues and increasing operating costs. She had invested her life savings in the restaurant business and was facing the possibility of losing everything she had worked to build. During our conversation, Sandra mentioned that she was spending nearly 40% of her revenue on rent across her 3 locations. The lease terms were restrictive, the rent increases were substantial, and she had no control over the physical spaces that were essential to her business success. Her landlords treated her restaurants as interchangeable tenants rather than partners in creating vibrant neighborhood businesses. This conversation illuminated the fundamental challenge faced by many small business owners. Their success was constrained by property costs and lease terms that prioritized landlord profits over tenant sustainability. I realized that controlling real estate could provide entrepreneurs with the stability and flexibility necessary to build successful businesses, while creating value for property owners who understood the symbiotic relationship between tenant success and property performance. I spent the following months researching real estate investment strategies, studying market conditions, and learning about property financing options. The initial research revealed that many successful businesses were owned by entrepreneurs who had recognized the importance of controlling their operating locations, rather than remaining dependent on landlord decisions that could undermine their business strategy. My first real estate purchase was a small duplex in a working-class neighborhood that had been neglected by previous owners. The property was listed at $85,000, but the condition was poor and the location was considered undesirable by most investors. However, my analysis revealed that the neighborhood was adjacent to a planned public transit expansion that would improve accessibility and likely increase property values over time. The financing process was complicated by my limited credit history and modest income from the advertising agency. Traditional mortgage lenders were skeptical about my ability to manage investment property while maintaining my primary employment. I eventually secured financing through a community development financial institution that specialized in supporting first-time real estate investors in emerging neighborhoods. The renovation process became my education in construction management, contractor coordination, and project budget. I spent evenings and weekends learning about electrical systems, plumbing repairs, and interior design principles. The work was physically demanding and often frustrating, but it provided practical knowledge that would prove invaluable for future investment projects. My family's reaction to the duplex purchase was mixed. My parents were concerned about the financial risk and questioned whether real estate investment was appropriate for someone with my limited experience and resources. Miguel suggested that I should focus on advancing my marketing career, rather than pursuing side projects that might distract from professional development. Elena worried that I was taking on too much responsibility and might be setting myself up for financial failure. Their concerns were understandable, but they reflected a fundamental misunderstanding of my strategic approach to building wealth and creating professional opportunities. I was not pursuing real estate investment as a hobby or side business. I was systematically developing the knowledge and experience necessary to transition from employee to entrepreneur in a field that offered substantial potential for growth and impact. The duplex renovation took 4 months to complete. I managed the project while maintaining my responsibilities at the advertising agency, often working on the property until late evening and throughout weekends. The experience taught me about time management, quality control, and the importance of building relationships with reliable contractors and suppliers. Both units were successfully rented within 2 weeks of completion. The rental income exceeded my mortgage payments and property maintenance costs by $600 monthly, providing positive cash flow that validated my investment strategy. More importantly, the renovation had increased the property value by approximately $25,000, creating substantial equity that could be leveraged for future investments. The success with the duplex led to my second purchase, 6 months later. This property was a single-family house in a transitional neighborhood, where young professionals were beginning to displace longtime residents. The demographics were changing, and property values were beginning to reflect the area's growing appeal to educated workers seeking affordable alternatives to expensive urban neighborhoods. The second property required less extensive renovation but demanded more sophisticated marketing to attract quality tenants. I developed comprehensive tenant screening procedures, created detailed lease agreements, and established systematic maintenance protocols that would ensure consistent property performance and positive tenant relationships. My approach to property management differed significantly from typical landlord practices. Instead of viewing tenants as interchangeable sources of rental income, I treated them as partners in maintaining property value and neighborhood stability. I responded promptly to maintenance requests, invested in quality improvements that enhanced tenant satisfaction, and maintained open communication about property conditions and community developments. This philosophy proved highly effective for tenant retention and property performance. My properties consistently attracted and retained high-quality tenants who took pride in their living environments and contributed to positive neighborhood dynamics. The stable rental income and low vacancy rates provided financial predictability that supported continued investment and expansion. By the end of my second year as a property investor, I owned 4 rental units across 3 properties. The combined rental income exceeded my salary from the advertising agency, but more importantly, the equity growth from property appreciation and improvement investments had created substantial net worth that far exceeded what I could have achieved through salary advancement alone. The success of my real estate investments provided financial freedom to make career decisions based on opportunity rather than necessity. I reduced my hours at the advertising agency and began offering consulting services to real estate investors and small business owners who needed marketing expertise tailored to their specific challenge. This transition from employee to entrepreneur reflected my growing confidence in my ability to identify opportunities, develop strategic solutions, and create value through disciplined execution. The real estate investments had provided both financial foundation and practical education that enabled me to pursue more ambitious projects and business ventures. However, my family's perception of my activities remained largely unchanged. They saw my reduced hours at the advertising agency as evidence of career instability rather than strategic business development. They interpreted my focus on real estate as a distraction from traditional career advancement rather than deliberate wealth building through entrepreneurship. The disconnect between my actual progress and their perception of my situation created ongoing tension during family gatherings. Their suggestions about returning to full-time employment or pursuing additional marketing credentials felt like fundamental misunderstanding of the path I was creating and the success I was achieving through systematic investment and business development. During this period, I also began developing expertise in neighborhood revitalization and community development. My investments were concentrated in areas where thoughtful improvement could contribute to positive change, while generating solid returns for investors. This approach required understanding local government policies, community organizations, and economic development initiatives that affected property values and neighborhood dynamics. The knowledge I gained about urban planning, zoning regulations, and community development processes would prove essential for identifying future investment opportunities and navigating complex regulatory environments. I began attending city council meetings, participating in neighborhood association activities, and building relationships with local officials who influenced development policy. These community connections provided insights into planned infrastructure projects, zoning changes, and economic development initiatives that would impact property values and investment opportunities. The information advantage gained through civic engagement became a significant factor in my ability to identify undervalued properties and anticipate market changes. My third year as a real estate investor was marked by increasingly sophisticated projects and larger financial commitment. I purchased a 6-unit apartment building that required substantial renovation and improved management systems. The project demanded coordination of multiple contractors, navigation of complex permitting processes, and development of comprehensive property management protocols. The apartment building renovation became my masterclass in large-scale project management and tenant relations. I learned about commercial lending, construction management, and the regulatory requirements specific to multifamily property. The experience prepared me for even more ambitious projects and established my reputation as a competent investor capable of handling complex challenges. The financial results exceeded my projections. The renovated apartment building generated monthly cash flow of $2,200, while creating over $60,000 in equity through improvements and market appreciation. The success validated my systematic approach to property investment and demonstrated my ability to scale operations without compromising quality or financial performance. However, the growing complexity of my real estate portfolio required more sophisticated business systems and professional support. I established a limited liability company to manage my investments, implemented accounting systems designed for real estate businesses, and began working with attorneys and accountants who specialized in investment property management. These professional relationships provided access to advanced investment strategies, tax optimization techniques, and legal structures that would support continued growth and asset protection. The business infrastructure I developed during this period would prove essential for managing the larger and more complex investments that would define the next phase of my career. The foundation years of my real estate career were characterized by systematic learning, disciplined execution, and strategic relationship building. I had transformed from a junior marketing coordinator with limited resources into a property investor managing a portfolio worth over $400,000. The experience had provided financial freedom, professional expertise, and the confidence necessary to pursue even more ambitious opportunities. The skills and knowledge developed during this period would prove invaluable for the breakthrough moments that lay ahead. However, the gap between my actual achievements and my family's perception of my capabilities would continue to create tension and misunderstanding that would eventually require direct confrontation and honest communication about my professional success and strategic vision. The telephone call that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of my career came on a Tuesday morning in November, interrupting my routine property inspection at the 6-unit apartment building I had recently renovated. The caller identified herself as Catherine Morrison, Development Director for Riverside Community Foundation, a nonprofit organization that had been working on neighborhood revitalization projects throughout the metropolitan area. Catherine explained that she had been observing my investment activities in the Riverside district, particularly noting the quality of renovations and the positive impact my properties had on neighborhood stability and aesthetic improvement. She mentioned that foundation board members had discussed my approach to property investment during their recent strategic planning sessions, recognizing that my work aligned with their community development objective. The foundation had received a substantial grant from the State Housing Authority to support affordable housing development in transitional neighborhoods. However, they were seeking private sector partners who could demonstrate both financial capability and commitment to community-centered development practices. Catherine invited me to submit a proposal for participating in their comprehensive neighborhood revitalization initiative. The opportunity represented a significant departure from my previous individual property investments. The foundation was proposing a coordinated development project that would involve purchasing and renovating 12 properties across 6 city blocks in the Riverside district. The total investment would exceed $2 million, requiring sophisticated project management capabilities and access to substantial financing resources. Catherine provided detailed information about the grant parameters and community development requirements. The foundation would contribute 40% of the total project cost through grant funding, while private investors would provide the remaining 60% through conventional financing and equity investment. The participating properties would be subject to affordability restrictions and community benefit requirements for a minimum of 10 years. The scale and complexity of the proposed project far exceeded anything I had previously undertaken. Success would require coordinating multiple contractors, navigating complex regulatory requirements, and managing community relations during an extended development period. The financial commitment would represent the largest investment of my career, requiring personal guarantees and substantial risk exposure that could impact my entire property portfolio. However, the opportunity also represented validation of my investment approach and recognition of my capabilities by established development professionals. The foundation had evaluated numerous potential partners before selecting me for consideration, indicating that my previous work had established credibility within the real estate development community. I requested 3 weeks to prepare a comprehensive proposal addressing all aspects of the project requirements. The preparation process required developing detailed financial projections, creating construction timelines, and establishing relationships with contractors and suppliers capable of handling the project scope. Additionally, I needed to secure preliminary financing commitments and obtain legal counsel familiar with public-private partnership structures. The financial analysis revealed that the project would generate positive cash flow within 18 months of completion, with projected annual returns exceeding 15% over the 10-year commitment period. The community benefit requirements would limit rental increases and tenant selection flexibility, but the grant funding would offset these constraints while providing stable, long-term returns. The construction timeline presented significant challenges related to coordinating multiple simultaneous renovations while maintaining quality standards and budget discipline. I developed a phased approach that would allow for systematic completion of properties while minimizing disruption to existing tenants and neighborhood residents. My proposal included detailed plans for community engagement throughout the development process. I committed to regular meetings with neighborhood associations, transparent communication about construction schedules, and opportunities for local residents to provide input about design decisions and property management policy. The financing structure required establishing relationships with commercial lenders experienced in community development projects. I secured preliminary commitments from 2 banks that specialized in public-private partnerships, providing confidence that the necessary capital would be available upon project approval. Catherine's response to my proposal was enthusiastic. She particularly appreciated the comprehensive nature of my planning and the genuine commitment to community benefit that was evident throughout the proposal. After review by the Foundation Board and consultation with their legal and financial advisors, they approved my participation in the project and authorized the initial phase of development. The Riverside District Revitalization Project began in February and immediately tested every aspect of my business management capability. Coordinating 12 simultaneous renovations required sophisticated project management systems, quality control protocols, and contractor oversight that far exceeded the requirements of my previous investment. I established a temporary office in the neighborhood to facilitate daily oversight and community communication. The presence of a local project office demonstrated my commitment to the community and provided convenient access for residents who wanted information about construction schedules or had concerns about project impact. The first phase involved purchasing and beginning renovation of 4 properties clustered within 2 city blocks. Each property presented unique challenges related to structural conditions, environmental issues, and historical preservation requirements. The diversity of problems required flexible problem solving and access to specialized contractors with expertise in different renovation challenges. The lead contractor I selected was Maria Santos, whose construction company had extensive experience in affordable housing development and community revitalization projects. Maria's understanding of regulatory requirements and commitment to quality workmanship proved invaluable for navigating the complex approval processes and maintaining construction schedules despite unexpected challenges. The renovation work exceeded my initial quality expectations, while remaining within budget parameters. Maria's team demonstrated exceptional craftsmanship in restoring original architectural details, while incorporating modern systems and energy-efficient improvements. The properties were transformed from deteriorated structures into attractive, functional housing that enhanced neighborhood character, while providing affordable rental options. The community response to the renovation work was overwhelmingly positive. Neighborhood residents appreciated the obvious improvement in property conditions and the respectful approach to construction management that minimized disruption to daily life. Property owners in adjacent areas began investing in their own improvement projects, creating a ripple effect of neighborhood enhancement. The success of the first phase led to accelerated approval for the remaining 8 properties. The foundation board was impressed by the quality of work and the positive community impact, authorizing expansion of the project timeline to include additional properties beyond the original scope. However, the expanded project created new challenges related to contractor capacity and material supply chain management. The construction industry was experiencing increased demand, making it difficult to secure skilled labor and materials at predictable cost. I needed to develop new supplier relationships and adjust project schedules to accommodate resource constraints. The solution involved establishing partnerships with additional contractors, while maintaining quality standards through rigorous oversight and clear performance expectations. I implemented systematic quality control procedures and regular progress reviews that ensured consistent results across all properties despite the involvement of multiple construction teams. The project management experience provided invaluable education in large-scale development operations and stakeholder coordination. I learned about regulatory compliance, environmental remediation, and the complex approval processes required for publicly funded development projects. The knowledge gained would prove essential for future development opportunities and established my reputation as a competent project manager capable of handling complex high-stakes initiatives. The financial results of the Riverside District project exceeded all projections. The properties were fully leased within 6 weeks of completion, generating monthly rental income of $18,000, while creating over $300,000 in equity through improvements and market appreciation. More importantly, the project established my credentials as a development professional capable of handling complex community-focused initiatives. The success attracted attention from other nonprofit organizations, government agencies, and private investors interested in similar projects throughout the metropolitan area. The recognition led to speaking invitations at industry conferences and participation in policy discussions about affordable housing development and neighborhood revitalization strategies. I became a recognized voice in conversations about sustainable development practices and community-centered investment approaches. The professional recognition was personally satisfying, but the broader impact involved establishing networks of relationships with other development professionals, government officials, and community leaders who would become essential partners for future projects. The credibility gained through the Riverside District project opened doors to opportunities that would not have been accessible through individual property investments alone. However, my family's perception of my activities remained largely unchanged during this period. They observed my increased work hours and travel schedule as evidence of business stress rather than professional advancement. They interpreted my focus on complex projects as unnecessarily risky rather than strategic career development. The disconnect between my actual achievements and their understanding of my professional progress created ongoing frustration during family interaction. Their suggestions about returning to traditional employment or pursuing more stable career paths felt disconnected from the reality of my business success and the opportunities I was creating through systematic investment and development work. The Riverside District project also provided the foundation for my next major initiative, establishing a development company focused on community-centered affordable housing projects. The experience had demonstrated my capabilities in project management, financing, and stakeholder coordination, while revealing the significant demand for development partners who understood both financial requirements and community impact considerations. I began developing business plans for a formal development company that would specialize in public-private partnerships and community revitalization initiatives. The company would leverage my experience and relationships while providing the organizational structure necessary for handling larger and more complex projects. The transition from individual property investor to development company founder represented a fundamental shift in my professional identity and business strategy. The change required new skills in business development, team building, and strategic planning that would support sustained growth and increased impact. The success of the Riverside District project had validated my approach to community-centered development, while providing the financial resources and professional credibility necessary for pursuing even more ambitious initiatives. The foundation established during this breakthrough period would support the exponential growth and recognition that would characterize the next phase of my career. However, the most significant impact of the project was the confidence it provided in my ability to handle complex challenges and create meaningful change through systematic effort and strategic thinking. The experience had proven that my investment approach could generate both financial returns and community benefit, establishing a sustainable model for future development work. The recognition and relationships developed through the Riverside District project would prove essential for the opportunities that lay ahead. However, the continued gap between my professional achievements and my family's perception of my capabilities would require direct confrontation and honest communication about the scale and impact of my work. The foundation established through this breakthrough project would eventually create circumstances that would make my success impossible for my family to overlook or dismiss. The properties, relationships, and reputation I had built were creating momentum that would soon demand recognition from everyone who had underestimated my capabilities and potential. The success of the Riverside District project created a cascade of opportunities that transformed my business operations from individual property investments into a comprehensive development enterprise. Within 6 months of completing the Community Revitalization Initiative, I received inquiries from 3 municipal housing authorities, 2 nonprofit organizations, and a private equity firm seeking partners for affordable housing development projects throughout the metropolitan region. The first significant opportunity emerged from the Metropolitan Housing Authority, which had been awarded federal funding for a comprehensive affordable housing initiative spanning 4 suburban communities. The authority required private sector partners capable of managing complex development projects while adhering to strict regulatory requirements and community benefit standards. The program director, Robert Chen, had observed my work in the Riverside District and specifically requested my participation in their partner selection process. The Metropolitan Housing Authority project would involve developing 62 affordable housing units across 8 properties in 4 different municipalities. The total investment exceeded $5 million, requiring sophisticated project management capabilities and access to substantial financing resources. The regulatory requirements were complex, involving federal housing regulations, state environmental standards, and local zoning compliance across multiple jurisdictions. Robert provided detailed specifications for the project requirements, including affordability targets, construction timelines, and community engagement protocol. The participating properties would be subject to income restrictions and rent stabilization requirements for 15 years, creating long-term commitments that would affect investment returns and property management strategy. The financial structure required coordination between federal grants, state housing trust funds, and private financing sources. I needed to establish relationships with specialized lenders experienced in affordable housing development while navigating the complex approval processes required for accessing public funding streams. The project timeline demanded completion of all properties within 18 months, requiring concurrent development activities across multiple sites while maintaining quality standards and regulatory compliance. The coordination challenges were unprecedented in my experience, requiring systematic approaches to contractor management, supply chain coordination, and regulatory navigation. I assembled a development team that included Maria Santos as lead contractor, Catherine Torres as project manager, and David Kim as financial coordinator. Each team member brought specialized expertise, essential for handling the complexity of multi-site development under federal regulatory oversight. Maria's construction company had expanded significantly following the success of the Riverside District project, adding specialized crews and equipment necessary for handling larger development initiatives. Her understanding of affordable housing construction requirements and proven ability to maintain quality standards under tight timelines made her the ideal partner for this expanded project. Catherine Torres brought extensive experience in project management for government-funded development initiatives. Her expertise in regulatory compliance, community engagement, and stakeholder coordination would prove invaluable for navigating the complex approval processes and maintaining positive relationships with multiple municipal authorities. David Kim's background in development finance provided essential capabilities for managing the complex funding structures required for publicly supported affordable housing projects. His relationships with specialized lenders and understanding of federal housing programs would be crucial for securing necessary financing and maintaining cash flow throughout the development process. The team structure represented a fundamental shift from my previous approach to property development. Instead of managing all aspects of projects personally, I focused on strategic oversight and stakeholder coordination while delegating operational responsibilities to specialized professionals. This evolution required developing new skills in team leadership, performance management, and quality assurance that would support continued business growth. The Metropolitan Housing Authority project began in March and immediately demonstrated the increased complexity of multi-site development under federal oversight. Each property required separate environmental assessments, individual zoning approvals, and distinct community engagement processes that reflected the unique characteristics of different municipal jurisdictions. The environmental assessment process revealed varying degrees of soil contamination and infrastructure challenges across the 8 properties. 2 sites required extensive remediation before construction could begin, while 3 others needed infrastructure improvements to support increased residential density. The environmental challenges added 6 weeks to the overall project timeline and increased development costs by approximately 12%. The zoning approval process presented unique challenges in each municipality, reflecting different local priorities and regulatory framework. 2 communities required public hearings and community impact assessments before approving the affordable housing developments. 1 municipality requested modifications to building designs to better integrate with existing neighborhood character. These variations required flexible approaches to design and construction while maintaining cost efficiency and timeline adherence. The community engagement protocols demanded systematic outreach to neighborhood residents, business owners, and local organizations in each development area. I established regular communication schedules, created informational materials explaining project benefits, and organized community meetings to address concerns and gather input about design decisions and property management policy. The community response varied significantly across different locations, reflecting diverse demographic compositions and historical experiences with affordable housing development. 2 communities embraced the projects enthusiastically, recognizing the potential for neighborhood improvement and economic development. 1 area expressed concerns about potential impacts on property values and neighborhood character. The remaining communities demonstrated cautious support contingent on specific design modifications and ongoing communication about project progress. The construction phase required coordinating 8 concurrent projects while maintaining quality standards and budget discipline. Maria's team developed systematic approaches to material procurement, labor scheduling, and quality control that ensured consistent results across all properties, despite the geographical distribution and varying site conditions. The financing coordination involved managing multiple funding sources with different disbursement schedules and reporting requirements. David established comprehensive accounting systems and regular reporting protocols that satisfied all regulatory requirements while providing clear visibility into project financial performance and cash flow management. The project management challenges were unprecedented in my experience, requiring daily coordination between multiple contractors, regulatory agencies, and community stakeholders. Catherine implemented systematic communication protocols and progress tracking systems that ensured all parties remained informed about project developments and potential issues requiring attention. The Metropolitan Housing Authority project was completed successfully within the revised timeline and budget parameter. All 62 housing units were fully leased within 4 weeks of completion, generating monthly rental income of $37,000 while creating over $800,000 in equity. equity through development and market appreciation. The success established my reputation as a development professional capable of handling complex, multi-jurisdictional projects under federal oversight. The recognition led to additional opportunities with other housing authorities and nonprofit organizations seeking experienced partners for similar development initiatives. However, the most significant impact involved the network of professional relationships established during the project. The collaboration with municipal officials, federal agency representatives, and community leaders created ongoing connections that would prove essential for future development opportunities and policy advocacy efforts. The second major opportunity emerged from Coastal Community Development Corporation, a nonprofit organization focused on sustainable housing development in environmentally sensitive areas. The organization had received funding for an innovative affordable housing project incorporating green building technologies and community sustainability programs. The Coastal Community Development Corporation project would involve constructing 45 housing units using advanced energy efficiency systems and sustainable building materials. The development would include community gardens, renewable energy installations, and educational programs focused on environmental stewardship and sustainable living practices. The project represented a departure from traditional affordable housing development, requiring expertise in green building technologies and community programming that extended beyond conventional construction and property management. The innovation challenges appealed to my interest in advancing sustainable development practices while creating meaningful community benefit. The technical requirements demanded partnerships with specialized contractors and suppliers experienced in green building systems and renewable energy installation. I established relationships with solar installation companies, energy efficiency consultants, and sustainable building material suppliers who could support the project's environmental objectives. The third significant opportunity came from Harbor Point Investment Group, a private equity firm seeking partners for market-rate housing development in gentrifying neighborhoods. The firm had identified 12 properties in emerging areas where strategic development could generate substantial returns while contributing to neighborhood revitalization. The Harbor Point Investment Group project would involve higher-end development targeting young professionals and empty nesters seeking urban lifestyle options. The project would test my ability to adapt development capabilities to different market segments while maintaining the community-focused approach that had characterized my previous work. The coordination of three major development projects representing different market segments and regulatory requirements demanded sophisticated business systems and expanded team capability. I established a formal development company, Meridian Development Group, to provide the organizational structure necessary for managing multiple concurrent projects and supporting continued business growth. The transition from individual property investor to development company founder required implementing comprehensive business systems for project management, financial coordination, and stakeholder communication. I invested in professional-grade project management software, established formal accounting procedures, and created standardized protocols for contractor management and quality assurance. The business expansion also required developing new capabilities in marketing, business development, and strategic planning that would support sustained growth and market positioning. I began participating in industry associations, attending professional development programs, and building relationships with other development professionals who could provide mentorship and collaboration opportunities. The success of multiple concurrent projects generated recognition within the regional development community and attracted attention from industry publications and professional organizations. I was invited to speak at conferences about sustainable development practices and community-centered investment strategies, establishing thought leadership in areas that aligned with my professional values and business objectives. The professional recognition was personally satisfying, but the broader impact involved establishing credibility that would support future business development and access to larger and more complex opportunities. The reputation for quality work and community focus created competitive advantages that would prove essential for continued growth and market differentiation. However, my family's perception of my activities remained largely unchanged during this period of rapid business expansion. They observed my increased travel schedule and complex project discussions as evidence of business complications rather than professional advancement. They interpreted my focus on multiple concurrent projects as potential overextension rather than strategic business development. The disconnect between my actual achievements and their understanding of my professional progress created ongoing tension during family interaction. Their suggestions about business simplification or return to traditional employment felt increasingly disconnected from the reality of my success and the opportunities I was creating through systematic development work and strategic relationship building. The foundation established through this network building phase would support the exponential growth and recognition that would characterize the next phase of my career. The relationships, capabilities, and reputation developed during this period would prove essential for the opportunities that lay ahead, including the circumstances that would eventually force my family to confront the reality of my professional achievements and business success. The crisis that would test every system and relationship I had built began with a 4:30 a.m. phone call from David Kim, my financial coordinator. His voice carried an urgency that immediately dissolved any remnants of sleep as he explained that our primary construction lender, Pinnacle Commercial Bank, had just announced an immediate suspension of all development loan funding due to regulatory compliance issues with federal banking authorities. The timing could not have been more devastating. 3 major projects were in active construction phases, requiring regular funding disbursements to maintain contractor payments and material deliveries. The Metropolitan Housing Authority project was approaching its final phase, with completion scheduled within 6 weeks. The Coastal Community Development Corporation initiative had reached the critical stage where specialized green building systems were being installed. The Harbor Point Investment Group development was midway through construction, with significant financial commitments already made to contractors and suppliers. The total exposure across all 3 projects exceeded $2 million in outstanding construction costs, with completion dependent on continued access to finance. Without immediate resolution of the banking crisis, I faced the possibility of project delays, contractor disputes, and potential legal complications that could undermine everything I had built over the past 5 years. David had been monitoring our financial position carefully throughout the development process, maintaining detailed cash flow projections and maintaining relationships with multiple lenders to ensure continued access to capital. However, the sudden suspension of funding from our primary lender created an immediate liquidity crisis that threatened all ongoing operations. The banking crisis had emerged from federal regulatory concerns about Pinnacle Commercial Bank's loan documentation procedures and risk assessment protocol. The regulatory investigation was expected to continue for several months, during which time all new loan disbursements would be suspended, pending resolution of compliance issues. I arrived at the Meridian Development Group office by 6 a.m. to begin crisis management efforts. The immediate priority was assessing our exact financial position and determining how long current operations could continue with existing resources. David had prepared comprehensive financial reports showing cash balances, outstanding obligations, and projected funding requirements for each project. The analysis revealed that current cash reserves could sustain operations for approximately 3 weeks at current spending level. However, several major payments were scheduled within the next 10 days, including contractor invoices totaling $400,000 and material deliveries worth an additional $200,000. The second priority involved communicating with project stakeholders to explain the situation and coordinate response efforts. I contacted Catherine Torres to discuss immediate operational adjustments that could extend available funding while maintaining project momentum. Maria Santos needed to understand the potential impact on construction schedules and contractor payments to develop contingency plans that would minimize disruption to ongoing work. The conversations with contractors and suppliers were challenging but necessary. Each vendor had financial obligations and operational commitments that depended on timely payment for completed work. However, most contractors had worked with me on previous projects and understood that the banking crisis was beyond my control and required collaborative problem-solving to resolve. Maria Santos demonstrated exceptional leadership during this crisis, coordinating with her subcontractors to adjust payment schedules and work sequences that would minimize immediate cash requirements while maintaining construction progress. Her willingness to temporarily defer some payments and adjust material delivery schedules provided crucial flexibility during the most critical phase of the crisis. The third priority involved identifying alternative financing sources that could provide immediate liquidity while longer-term solutions were developed. David had maintained relationships with several regional banks and credit unions that might be willing to provide emergency funding, though the approval processes would require comprehensive documentation and potentially several weeks to complete. I also reached out to Harbor Point Investment Group to discuss the possibility of accelerated equity contributions that could provide immediate funding for their development project. The private equity firm had been pleased with construction progress and quality, and their financial capacity would allow for modified payment schedules that could address immediate liquidity needs. The most challenging aspect of the crisis involved communicating with the Metropolitan Housing Authority and Coastal Community Development Corporation about potential delays and funding complications. Both organizations had strict timeline requirements and regulatory constraints that made project delays particularly problematic. Robert Chen from the Metropolitan Housing Authority was understanding but concerned about the potential impact on federal funding compliance and community commitments. The affordable housing project had been publicized extensively, with families already approved for tenancy expecting to move into completed units within 8 weeks. The Coastal Community Development Corporation faced similar constraints, with grant funding requirements that included specific completion deadlines and community programming commitment. The organization had invested significant resources in marketing the sustainable housing development and had established partnerships with environmental organizations that depended on project completion. The crisis required working 18-hour days for 2 weeks while coordinating multiple simultaneous solutions. I established a temporary crisis management center in the office, with David managing financial negotiations, Catherine coordinating project adjustments, and Maria maintaining construction operations under modified schedules. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Rachel Martinez, whom I had met at a sustainable development conference 6 months earlier, contacted me about the banking crisis. Rachel worked as a program director for the Regional Development Finance Authority, a quasi-governmental organization that provided emergency funding for development projects facing temporary financing challenges. Rachel explained that the Finance Authority had been created specifically to address situations like mine, where viable development projects encountered unexpected financing disruptions that threatened community benefits and economic development objectives. The organization could provide bridge financing that would allow projects to continue while permanent solutions were developed. The Regional Development Finance Authority required extensive documentation and rapid approval processes, but their emergency funding program could provide up to $3 million in temporary financing within 10 days of application approval. The interest rates were higher than conventional construction loans, but the terms were manageable for short-term bridge financing. I spent 3 days preparing comprehensive applications for emergency funding, including detailed financial projections, construction schedules, and stakeholder impact assessment. The documentation process required coordinating with contractors, suppliers, and project partners to provide verification of costs and commitments. The Finance Authority review process was intensive but efficient. Rachel coordinated with their underwriting team to expedite approval procedures while maintaining thorough risk assessment standards. The application review included site visits, financial audits, and stakeholder interviews that confirmed the viability of all 3 development projects. The emergency funding approval was announced on a Friday afternoon, providing access to $2.8 million in bridge financing that would allow all projects to continue without interruption. The relief was immediate and profound, allowing me to contact all stakeholders with confirmation that construction would proceed as scheduled. The crisis resolution required establishing new financial management procedures that would prevent similar vulnerabilities in the future. I implemented diversified lending relationships across multiple financial institutions, created larger cash reserves to handle unexpected funding interruptions, and developed contingency financing arrangements that would provide security for future projects. The experience also revealed the strength of professional relationships I had built throughout the development community. Contractors, suppliers, and project partners had demonstrated remarkable flexibility and loyalty during the crisis, providing collaborative support that was essential for maintaining operations during the most challenging period. The banking crisis had tested every aspect of my business management capabilities, from financial planning and risk assessment to stakeholder communication and crisis leadership. The successful resolution provided confidence in my ability to handle complex challenges while maintaining the trust and cooperation of professional partners and community stakeholders. However, the crisis also highlighted the inherent risks in development work and the importance of maintaining robust financial management systems that could handle unexpected challenges. The experience led to systematic improvements in cash flow management, risk assessment, and contingency planning that would strengthen future operations. The resolution of the banking crisis coincided with completion of the Metropolitan Housing Authority project, which had proceeded without significant delays despite the financing complications. The successful completion under challenging circumstances demonstrated the resilience of our development systems and the commitment of our professional team. The project outcomes exceeded all expectations, with full occupancy achieved within 3 weeks of completion and tenant satisfaction levels that surpassed Housing Authority standards. The success reinforced my reputation as a development professional capable of handling complex challenges while maintaining quality standards and community commitment. The Coastal Community Development Corporation project was completed 6 weeks later, incorporating all planned sustainable building features and community programs. The development achieved LEED Gold certification and became a model for sustainable affordable housing development that attracted attention from environmental organizations and housing advocates throughout the region. The Harbor Point Investment Group development was completed within the original timeline and budget parameters, generating returns that exceeded investor expectations, while contributing to neighborhood revitalization objectives. The success led to additional opportunities with the private equity firm and established precedents for future market-rate development projects. The crisis had transformed a potentially devastating situation into a demonstration of resilience and professional competence that strengthened all business relationships and market position. The experience provided valuable lessons about risk management and crisis response that would inform future business decisions and operational procedures. However, my family's perception of the crisis reflected their continued misunderstanding of my professional situation. They observed my stress and extended work hours as evidence of business problems, rather than evidence of my capability to handle complex challenges. Their suggestions about seeking more stable employment felt disconnected from the reality of my success in resolving the crisis and completing all projects successfully. The disconnect between my actual achievements and their understanding of my professional progress remained a source of ongoing frustration. The crisis had demonstrated my ability to manage complex situations under pressure while maintaining stakeholder confidence and project quality. But these accomplishments remained largely invisible to family members, who continued to view my work through the lens of their original assumptions about my capability. The foundation established through successfully navigating this crisis would prove essential for the opportunities that lay ahead. The experience had demonstrated my resilience and leadership capabilities, while strengthening professional relationships and market credibility that would support continued business growth and recognition within the development community. The successful resolution of the banking crisis had established Meridian Development Group as a resilient organization capable of handling complex challenges while maintaining stakeholder confidence and project quality. Within 3 months of completing the emergency financing arrangements, I received inquiries from 7 different organizations seeking development partnerships that would leverage our proven capabilities in affordable housing, sustainable development, and community revitalization initiatives. The most significant opportunity emerged from the State Housing Finance Agency, which had been awarded a federal grant to support comprehensive affordable housing development across 12 metropolitan areas. The agency required private sector partners capable of managing large-scale development programs while adhering to strict federal regulatory requirements and community engagement protocols. The State Housing Finance Agency program represented a fundamental expansion in both scale and complexity compared to my previous projects. The initiative would involve developing over 400 affordable housing units across 24 properties in 12 different municipalities. The total investment exceeded $15 million, requiring sophisticated project management capabilities and access to substantial financing resources, that would stretch my organization's capacity to its limit. Program Director Jennifer Walsh explained that the agency had evaluated dozens of potential partners before selecting 5 development companies for participation in the initiative. The selection criteria emphasized proven track records in affordable housing development, demonstrated financial stability, and commitment to community-centered development practices that aligned with federal housing policy objectives. The program structure required establishing local partnerships in each metropolitan area, coordinating with municipal housing authorities, and navigating diverse regulatory environments that reflected different local priorities and development standards. The complexity of managing simultaneous development activities across 12 jurisdictions would demand systematic approaches to project coordination and stakeholder management that exceeded anything I had previously undertaken. Jennifer provided comprehensive specifications for the program requirements, including affordability targets, construction timelines, and community benefit standards that would govern all development activity. The participating properties would be subject to income restrictions and rent stabilization requirements for 20 years, creating long-term commitments that would significantly impact investment returns and property management strategy. The financial structure involved coordinating federal grants, state housing trust funds, local government contributions, and private financing sources across multiple jurisdictions, with different regulatory requirements and approval process. The complexity of managing diverse funding streams while maintaining compliance with varying regulatory standards would require sophisticated financial management systems and legal expertise that would stretch my organization's capability. I requested 6 weeks to prepare a comprehensive response to the program requirements, including detailed financial projections, organizational capacity assessments, and strategic partnerships that would support successful program implementation. The preparation process required expanding my professional team and establishing new operational systems that would support the increased scale and complexity of the proposed development program. The organizational expansion began with recruiting additional key personnel who possessed specialized expertise essential for managing large-scale development programs. I hired Rebecca Chen as operations director, bringing 15 years of experience in affordable housing development and federal program management. Her understanding of regulatory compliance and stakeholder coordination would be crucial for navigating the complex requirements of multi-jurisdictional development initiatives. I also recruited Michael Torres as construction manager, whose background included oversight of large-scale residential development projects and experience with federal construction standards. His expertise in contractor coordination and quality control would be essential for maintaining consistent construction standards across multiple simultaneous projects in different geographical areas. The third key addition was Sarah Kim as community engagement coordinator, whose experience in affordable housing advocacy and community organizing would support the extensive stakeholder coordination required for successful program implementation. Her understanding of community concerns and communication strategies would be vital for maintaining positive relationships with residents, local officials, and advocacy organizations throughout the development process. The expansion of professional staff required establishing new organizational systems for project management, financial coordination, and quality assurance that would support increased operational complexity while maintaining the standards that had characterized my previous work. I implemented enterprise-level project management software, established comprehensive reporting procedures, and created standardized protocols for contractor management across multiple projects. The proposal development process required creating detailed implementation plans for each metropolitan area, including site selection criteria, construction timelines, and community engagement strategies that reflected local conditions and priorities. The diversity of markets required flexible approaches that could accommodate different demographic profiles, economic conditions, and regulatory environments while maintaining consistent quality standards. The financial projections incorporated complex funding structures that varied across different jurisdictions, requiring sophisticated cash flow modeling and risk assessment that accounted for potential delays, cost overruns, and regulatory complications. The analysis demonstrated that the program could generate positive returns while achieving all federal program objectives, but success would require exceptional project management and financial coordination. The State Housing Finance Agency approved my organization's participation in the program following comprehensive review of our proposal and organizational capability. The approval represented validation of our development expertise and recognition of our capacity to handle complex, large-scale initiatives under federal oversight. The program implementation began with site selection and acquisition activities across all 12 metropolitan areas. The process required coordinating with local housing authorities, municipal planning departments, and community organizations to identify appropriate development sites that met federal program requirements while addressing local housing needs and development priorities. The site selection criteria included proximity to public transportation, access to employment centers, availability of community services, and compatibility with existing neighborhood character. The federal program requirements emphasized creating affordable housing that would enhance, rather than isolate low-income residents, requiring careful attention to location selection and community integration strategy. The acquisition process involved simultaneous negotiations for 24 properties across 12 different markets, requiring sophisticated coordination of legal, financial, and technical due diligence activity. The complexity of managing multiple concurrent transactions while maintaining budget discipline and timeline adherence tested every aspect of our organizational systems and professional capability. Rebecca Chen coordinated the acquisition activities, establishing systematic procedures for property evaluation, financial analysis, and regulatory compliance that ensured consistent decision-making across all markets. Her experience in affordable housing development proved invaluable for navigating the complex requirements and avoiding potential complications that could delay program implementation. The construction phase required coordinating 24 simultaneous projects while maintaining federal quality standards and regulatory compliance across 12 different jurisdictions. Michael Torres developed comprehensive construction management systems that included standardized design specifications, quality control procedures, and contractor oversight protocols that would ensure consistent results despite the geographical distribution of development sites. The contractor selection process involved establishing partnerships with qualified construction companies in each metropolitan area, requiring evaluation of financial capacity, technical capabilities, and experience with affordable housing development. The diversity of local markets required flexibility in contractor relationships while maintaining consistent quality standards and federal compliance requirements. The community engagement activities demanded systematic outreach to residents, local officials, and advocacy organizations in each development area. Sarah Kim established comprehensive communication programs that included regular community meetings, informational materials, and feedback mechanisms that ensured all stakeholders remained informed about project progress and had opportunities to provide input about development decisions. The program generated unprecedented challenges related to regulatory coordination, stakeholder management, and quality control across multiple jurisdictions. The complexity of maintaining federal compliance while addressing diverse local requirements required constant attention to detail and proactive communication with regulatory agencies and community partners. However, the systematic approaches we had developed for project management and stakeholder coordination proved effective for handling the increased scale and complexity. The organizational systems established during the preparation phase provided the foundation for successful program implementation, despite the operational challenges inherent in large-scale, multi-jurisdictional development initiatives. The first phase of the program was completed within the original timeline and budget parameters, delivering 120 affordable housing units across 6 properties in 4 metropolitan areas. The success generated recognition from federal housing officials and established our organization as a capable partner for similar large-scale development programs. The program outcomes exceeded federal performance standards in terms of construction quality, community engagement, and tenant satisfaction. The success led to additional opportunities with federal housing agencies and established precedents for future large-scale development initiatives that would leverage our proven capabilities in affordable housing development. The financial results demonstrated the viability of our business model for large-scale development programs, generating stable returns while achieving significant community benefit. The program's success provided the foundation for continued growth and established our organization as a recognized leader in affordable housing development within the regional market. The professional recognition extended beyond housing development to include participation in policy discussions about affordable housing strategy and community development practices. I was invited to serve on federal advisory committees and participate in research initiatives that would influence national housing policy and development standards. However, my family's perception of my activities remained largely unchanged during this period of dramatic business expansion. They observed my increased travel schedule and complex project discussions as evidence of business complications rather than professional advancement. Their suggestions about business simplification continued to reflect fundamental misunderstanding of my strategic objectives and market positioning. The disconnect between my actual achievements and their understanding of my professional progress created ongoing frustration during family interactions. The success of the State Housing Finance Agency program represented a significant milestone in my career development, but these accomplishments remained largely invisible to family members who continued to view my work through the lens of their original assumptions about my capabilities and potential. The foundation established through this scaling phase would prove essential for the recognition and opportunities that lay ahead. The relationships, capabilities, and reputation developed during this period would support continued business growth and establish the credibility necessary for the industry leadership role that would characterize the next phase of my career development. The phone call that would forever alter my professional trajectory and public recognition came on a crisp October morning while I was conducting a site inspection at our latest affordable housing development in the Riverside metropolitan area. The caller identified herself as Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, Executive Director of the National Affordable Housing Council, a prestigious organization that represented housing developers, policymakers, and advocacy groups across the United States. Dr. Rodriguez explained that the National Affordable Housing Council had been monitoring my work through the State Housing Finance Agency program and had been particularly impressed by the innovative approaches to community engagement and sustainable development practices that characterized Meridian Development Group's project. She mentioned that my organization had been nominated for the Council's Excellence in Community Development Award, e-industry's most prestigious recognition for outstanding achievement in affordable housing development. The Excellence in Community Development Award was presented annually to a single development organization that demonstrated exceptional innovation, community impact, and professional excellence in affordable housing development. Previous recipients included major national development companies and established nonprofit organizations with decades of experience and resources that far exceeded those of my relatively young company. Dr. Rodriguez provided details about the nomination process and evaluation criteria. The award selection committee would conduct comprehensive assessments of nominated organizations, including site visits to completed projects, interviews with community stakeholders, and detailed reviews of financial performance and regulatory compliance records. The evaluation process would culminate in presentations to the full council board at their national conference in Washington. The nomination represented unprecedented recognition for my work and validation of the community-centered development philosophy that had guided my approach since the earliest property investment. However, the evaluation process would subject every aspect of my organization's operations to scrutiny by industry leaders and housing policy experts who would assess whether my achievements merited national recognition. I accepted the nomination with genuine excitement, but also recognition of the significant preparation required to present my organization effectively to the National Evaluation Committee. The process would require documenting our development philosophy, quantifying community impact metrics, and articulating our strategic vision for advancing affordable housing development practices. The preparation began with comprehensive documentation of our completed projects, including detailed case studies that demonstrated our approaches to community engagement, sustainable development, and innovative financing structure. Rebecca Chen coordinated the development of professional presentation materials that would effectively communicate our achievements in development philosophy to the evaluation committee. The first major component of the evaluation process involved site visits to 3 of our completed developments, allowing committee members to observe project quality and interview community stakeholders about their experiences with our development process and ongoing property management. The committee selected the Metropolitan Housing Authority project, the Coastal Community Development Corporation initiative, and 1 property from the State Housing Finance Agency program for detailed evaluation. The site visit preparations required coordinating with residents, local officials, and community partners to ensure they were available for interviews and comfortable discussing their experiences with our development approach. The process provided an opportunity to reconnect with stakeholders from previous projects and observe the long-term impact of our work on community development and resident satisfaction. The Evaluation Committee's visit to the Metropolitan Housing Authority project revealed the sustained positive impact our development approach had achieved over the 2 years since project completion. Resident satisfaction levels remained exceptionally high, with retention rates exceeding 90% and waiting lists for available units extending over 6 months. The properties had become focal points for neighborhood improvement, with adjacent property values increasing and several local businesses expanding their operations. The committee interviewed Maria Santos, who had been our lead contractor for the project, along with several residents and local officials. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, with particular emphasis on our responsive property management, commitment to ongoing maintenance and improvements, and continued engagement with community development initiatives. The evaluation of the Coastal Community Development Corporation project demonstrated the innovative approaches we had developed for sustainable, affordable housing development. The properties had achieved LEED Platinum certification and had become models for green building practices in affordable housing. The community gardens and renewable energy systems continued to provide educational opportunities and cost savings for residents while contributing to broader environmental sustainability objectives. The committee was particularly impressed by the comprehensive nature of our sustainability programming, which had evolved beyond the original project requirements to include resident education programs, community workshops on energy efficiency, and partnerships with environmental organizations that provided ongoing support for sustainable living practices. The State Housing Finance Agency project visit showcased our capabilities for managing large-scale multi-jurisdictional development programs while maintaining consistent quality standards and community engagement practices. The committee observed our systematic approaches to project coordination, stakeholder communication, and regulatory compliance that had enabled successful program implementation across diverse market conditions. The second component of the evaluation process involved detailed financial analysis of our organization's performance, including assessment of development costs, project returns, and long-term financial sustainability. The committee's financial experts reviewed our accounting systems, examined our project financing structures, and evaluated our approaches to risk management and quality control. The financial evaluation revealed that our organization had consistently achieved development costs below industry averages while maintaining construction quality that exceeded federal standards. Our innovative approaches to contractor partnerships, material procurement, and project management had generated cost efficiencies that allowed for enhanced community benefits without compromising financial viability. The committee was particularly interested in our financing strategies, which had successfully leveraged public funding sources while maintaining access to private capital markets. Our track record of completing projects within budget and timeline parameters had established credibility with lenders and investors that supported continued access to competitive financing terms. The third component involved presentations to the full evaluation committee about our development philosophy, strategic vision, and plans for continued innovation in affordable housing development. The presentation required articulating our unique approaches to community engagement, sustainable development, and scalable business models that could be replicated by other development organizations. I spent weeks preparing for the presentation, working with my team to develop compelling narratives about our development journey and the principles that had guided our success. The presentation needed to demonstrate not only what we had accomplished, but also how our approaches could contribute to broader advancement in affordable housing development practices. The presentation was scheduled for the National Affordable Housing Council's annual conference, which brought together over 2,000 housing professionals, policymakers, and advocacy leaders from across the country. The conference represented the industry's premier forum for sharing best practices, discussing policy initiatives, and recognizing outstanding achievements in affordable housing development. The conference environment was intimidating but also energizing. I was surrounded by industry leaders whose work I had studied and respected, including developers who had created thousands of affordable housing units, and policy advocates who had influenced national housing legislation. The opportunity to present my organization's work to this audience represented validation of our achievements and recognition of our potential contributions to the broader housing development community. The presentation went exceptionally well, with committee members asking detailed questions about our community engagement strategies, financial management approaches, and plans for continued innovation. The audience response was enthusiastic, with several industry leaders approaching me afterward to discuss potential collaboration opportunities and express interest in our development methods. The award announcement came 3 weeks later during the conference's closing ceremony. Dr. Rodriguez presented the Excellence in Community Development Award to Meridian Development Group, recognizing our innovative approaches to affordable housing development and our commitment to community-centered development practices that advanced both housing quality and neighborhood revitalization. The recognition was personally overwhelming and professionally transformative. The award established our organization as a national leader in affordable housing development and created opportunities for expansion into new markets and participation in policy development initiatives that would influence the future of affordable housing strategy. The media coverage following the award announcement included features in industry publications, interviews with housing policy journals, and recognition in mainstream media outlets that highlighted our work as an example of innovative approaches to addressing affordable housing challenges. The coverage generated inquiries from development organizations, investors, and government agencies seeking partnerships and consultation service. The professional recognition extended beyond the housing development industry to include invitations to speak at urban planning conferences, participate in research initiatives on sustainable development practices, and serve on advisory committees for federal housing agencies. The opportunities represented significant expansion in my professional network and influence within policy-making processes that would shape affordable housing development for years to come. However, the most meaningful aspect of the recognition involved the validation it provided for the community-centered development philosophy that had guided my work from the earliest property investment. The award confirmed that approaches emphasizing community engagement, resident empowerment, and long-term neighborhood improvement could achieve both financial success and meaningful social impact. The recognition also created new responsibilities and expectations for continued innovation and leadership within the affordable housing development community. The award established our organization as a model for other developers and created pressure to maintain the high standards and innovative approaches that had generated the recognition. The immediate impact included increased demand for our development services, with inquiries from housing authorities and nonprofit organizations in over 20 states seeking partnerships for affordable housing initiatives. The recognition had established credibility that opened doors to opportunities that would have been inaccessible without the validation provided by national industry recognition. The long-term implications involved positioning our organization for continued growth and influence within the affordable housing development sector. The award provided the foundation for expansion into new geographical markets and participation in larger-scale development initiatives that would leverage our proven capabilities while advancing our mission of creating high-quality affordable housing that strengthened community. However, my family's reaction to the national recognition reflected their continued difficulty understanding the significance of my professional achievement. They attended the local reception celebrating the award but seemed uncertain about what the recognition meant or why it was considered important within my industry. Their congratulations were genuine but restrained, reflecting their ongoing perception that my work remained somehow outside the realm of traditional professional success. The disconnect between the industry recognition I had received and their understanding of my achievements highlighted the persistent gap between external validation and family perception that had characterized our relationship throughout my career development. The foundation established through this recognition would prove essential for the opportunities and expanded influence that lay ahead. The credibility gained through national industry recognition would support continued business growth and create the platform necessary for the industry leadership role that would characterize the next phase of my career development. The moment that would shatter my family's carefully constructed misconceptions about my professional achievements began with an unexpected phone call from my sister Elena during her lunch break at the hospital. Her voice carried a tone of confusion and disbelief as she explained that one of her medical colleagues had approached her with congratulations about her sister's national award in affordable housing development. Patricia Gonzalez, a pediatric cardiologist who worked alongside Elena, had attended a medical conference where she encountered an article in the Airline magazine about innovative approaches to affordable housing development. The article featured a prominent photograph of me accepting the Excellence in Community Development Award, along with a detailed profile of Meridian Development Group's work in creating sustainable affordable housing communities across multiple states. Elena admitted that she had initially dismissed Dr. Gonzalez's comments, assuming there had been some confusion about identity or that the article referenced someone else with a similar name. However, when Dr. Gonzalez showed her the article and pointed out the photograph, Elena could no longer deny that her sister had achieved recognition that she had never understood or acknowledged. The conversation with Elena revealed the depth of my family's disconnection from my professional reality. She confessed that she had assumed my real estate activities were essentially hobby-level investments that generated modest supplemental income while I struggled to establish a legitimate career. The concept that I had built a nationally recognized development company with projects spanning multiple states was entirely outside her comprehension of my capabilities and achievements. Elena's shock was genuine and profound. She asked detailed questions about the timeline of my business development, the scale of my current operations, and the significance of the national recognition I had received. Her questions revealed that she had no understanding of the complexity and financial magnitude of the projects I had been managing for the past several years. The conversation forced me to explain aspects of my professional work that I had never discussed with family members, including the financial scope of development projects, the regulatory complexity of affordable housing programs, and the community impact metrics that had generated industry recognition. Elena listened with growing amazement as she began to understand the scale and sophistication of my business operation. However, the most significant aspect of our conversation involved Elena's realization that she had been consistently dismissive of achievements that merited national recognition from industry experts. She acknowledged that her perception of my work had been influenced by outdated assumptions and insufficient attention to the actual nature of my professional activity. Elena requested permission to share the article with our parents and brother Miguel, recognizing that they needed to understand the reality of my professional achievement. She also expressed concern about how the family had consistently failed to recognize or support my career development, acknowledging that their lack of awareness reflected fundamental problems with family communication and mutual understanding. The article's circulation within my family created immediate and profound reaction. My parents called within hours of receiving the article from Elena, their voices reflecting confusion and surprise as they attempted to reconcile the national recognition with their assumptions about my professional situation. My mother admitted that she had not understood that my real estate activities constituted a legitimate business enterprise with significant social impact and industry recognition. My father's reaction was more complex, combining pride in my achievements with bewilderment about how he had failed to recognize the scale and importance of my work. He asked detailed questions about my business operations and expressed regret about the family's failure to understand or support my career development throughout the years when I was building the foundation for national recognition. Miguel's response was perhaps the most revealing, as he acknowledged that he had consistently viewed my work as less legitimate than traditional corporate employment, despite evidence that my business achievements exceeded his own professional progress. He admitted that his suggestions about returning to conventional employment had been based on fundamental misunderstanding of my professional success and market positioning. The family conversations that followed the article's publication were unprecedented in their honesty and depth. For the first time, I had the opportunity to explain the strategic vision that had guided my career development and the systematic approaches I had used to build a nationally recognized development company while they assumed I was struggling with career direction. I described the evolution from individual property investments to community development initiatives, explaining how each phase had built upon previous experience while expanding my capabilities and market reach. The progression from small rental properties to multi-million-dollar development programs represented deliberate strategic planning rather than accidental success or opportunistic venture. The conversation about financial performance was particularly enlightening for family members who had assumed my business generated minimal income. I explained that Meridian Development Group's annual revenue exceeded $2 million and that my personal income had surpassed both Miguel's engineering salary and Elena's medical practice income for the past 3 years. However, the most important aspect of these discussions involved explaining the social impact and community benefit objectives that motivated my work beyond financial consideration. I described the affordable housing programs that had provided quality homes for hundreds of families and the community development initiatives that had contributed to neighborhood revitalization and economic development. The family's reaction to learning about the community impact of my work was transformative. My parents had always emphasized the importance of contributing to society and helping others, but they had never understood that my business activities were creating meaningful social benefits while achieving financial success. The realization that I had been pursuing work that aligned with their values while they criticized my career choices created profound reflection about their assumptions and communication patterns. The process of family education about my professional achievements also revealed the extent to which their misconceptions had influenced extended family perception. During subsequent family gatherings, relatives who had been told that I was struggling with career direction were surprised to learn about my national recognition and business success. Aunt Carmen, who had consistently asked intrusive questions about my employment status and financial stability, apologized for her assumptions and expressed admiration for my entrepreneurial success. Uncle Roberto, who had repeatedly suggested that I should pursue more traditional career paths, acknowledged that my business achievements exceeded those of family members who had followed conventional professional routes. The shift in family perception created new opportunities for meaningful conversations about career choices, entrepreneurship, and the diverse paths to professional success. My experience became a reference point for younger family members who were considering non-traditional career options or entrepreneurial ventures that their parents might not immediately understand or support. However, the family awakening also generated questions about why I had not shared information about my professional progress more consistently throughout my career development. My parents asked why I had allowed them to maintain misconceptions about my work rather than educating them about my achievements and strategic objectives. The conversation about communication patterns revealed complex dynamics that had contributed to the persistent misconception. I explained that my family's initial dismissive reactions to my real estate investments had discouraged me from sharing detailed information about subsequent business development. Their assumptions about my capabilities had created an environment where honest communication about my achievements felt defensive rather than celebratory. Additionally, the technical complexity of my work made it difficult to explain in casual conversation. Development finance, regulatory compliance, and community engagement strategies required detailed explanations that were not suitable for brief family interaction. The gap between my professional reality and their frame of reference had made meaningful communication challenging even when I attempted to provide updates about my work. The family acknowledged that their communication patterns had contributed to the persistence of misconception. Their tendency to offer unsolicited advice about career choices had been based on incomplete information and assumptions rather than genuine understanding of my professional situation. The recognition that their advice had been inappropriate and potentially harmful created commitment to improved communication and mutual understanding. The process of family education also extended to practical matters related to my business operation. I explained the corporate structure of Meridian Development Group, the geographic scope of our projects, and the professional team that supported our development activities. This information helped family members understand that my work involved substantial business infrastructure and professional relationships rather than individual real estate speculation. The discussion of business infrastructure led to conversations about future growth plans and opportunities for continued expansion within the affordable housing development sector. My family learned about the policy implications of my work and the potential for influencing federal housing programs through continued innovation and industry leadership. The family awakening process culminated in their request to visit some of my completed development projects, providing them with direct experience of the quality and community impact that had generated national recognition. The site visits allowed them to observe the physical results of my work and interview residents about their experiences with our affordable housing communities. The property visits were transformative for family members who had never understood the scale or quality of my development project. They observed well-designed communities with professional property management, engaged residents, and positive neighborhood impact that contradicted their assumptions about affordable housing development. The conversations with residents provided powerful validation of the community-centered development philosophy that guided my work. Families described improved housing stability, enhanced educational opportunities for their children, and stronger community connections that had resulted from living in our development. However, the family awakening also created new expectations and pressures related to my professional activity. Family members who had previously shown little interest in my work began asking detailed questions about business development, seeking advice about real estate investments, and requesting introductions to industry contacts. The increased family attention to my professional activities was gratifying, but also required establishing appropriate boundaries between business relationships and family interaction. I needed to maintain professional standards while accommodating family members' newfound interest in understanding and supporting my career development. The foundation established through this family awakening would prove essential for the conversations and relationships that lay ahead. The correction of fundamental misconceptions about my professional achievements created opportunities for authentic family relationships based on accurate understanding rather than persistent assumptions that had undermined mutual respect and communication for years. The circumstances that would lead to the most significant confrontation in my family's history began to converge during the spring planning season for our annual family reunion. This year marked the 20th anniversary of my grandparents' immigration to the United States, and my parents had decided to host an elaborate celebration that would bring together relatives from across the country to honor their legacy and acknowledge the family's collective achievements over the past 2 decades. The reunion planning process had become an exercise in family politics and subtle competition, with different branches of the family eager to showcase their successes and contributions to the immigrant dream that my grandparents had pursued when they arrived with limited resources and unlimited determination. The event had evolved beyond a simple family gathering into a comprehensive celebration of professional achievements, educational accomplishments, and community contributions that reflected the family's upward mobility and assimilation into American society. My mother had assumed responsibility for organizing the reunion, approaching the task with characteristic thoroughness and attention to detail that reflected her desire to create an event worthy of my grandparents' sacrifices and achievements. She had spent months coordinating with relatives, securing venues, and planning activities that would properly honor the family's journey from working-class immigrants to middle-class professionals with established careers and community recognition. The reunion agenda included formal presentations from family members about their professional achievements, educational accomplishments, and community involvement. The presentations were intended to demonstrate the diverse paths through which family members had achieved success while maintaining connections to their cultural heritage and family values. Each presentation would be followed by recognition from my grandparents and acknowledgement of individual contributions to the family's collective prosperity. My parents had specifically requested that I prepare a presentation about my real estate activities, though their invitation reflected their continued, incomplete understanding of my professional achievement. They had suggested that I discuss my property investments and community involvement, apparently still viewing my work as modest real estate speculation rather than the comprehensive development enterprise that had generated national recognition and industry leadership. The invitation to present at the reunion created an opportunity to address the family's misconceptions about my professional achievements while honoring my grandparents' legacy and demonstrating how my career had embodied their values of hard work, community service, and entrepreneurial initiative. However, the presentation also represented a potential catalyst for confronting years of family assumptions and communication patterns that had undermined mutual understanding and support. The preparation process for my reunion presentation required careful consideration of how to communicate the scope and significance of my professional achievements without appearing defensive or confrontational. I needed to provide accurate information about my business operations while maintaining respect for family relationships and avoiding comparisons that might diminish other family members' accomplishments. I decided to structure my presentation around the theme of building communities, emphasizing how my work in affordable housing development reflected the same values that had motivated my grandparents' immigration and family building efforts. The approach would allow me to describe my professional achievements within the context of family values, while providing education about the scale and impact of my development activity. The presentation preparation involved developing visual materials that would effectively communicate the scope of my work to family members who had limited understanding of real estate development or community planning. I created photographs of completed projects, maps showing the geographic distribution of our developments, and testimonials from residents whose lives had been improved through access to quality affordable housing. However, the most challenging aspect of preparation involved anticipating family reactions to learning about the true scale of my professional success. The presentation would reveal that my business achievements exceeded those of family members who had been consistently celebrated for their traditional career accomplishments. The information might create surprise, pride, or potentially resentment among relatives who had maintained misconceptions about my capabilities and contributions. The weeks leading up to the reunion were marked by increasing anticipation and anxiety about the family's response to my presentation. I had spent years accommodating their misconceptions to maintain family harmony, but the reunion provided an opportunity to establish accurate understanding of my professional identity and achievements within the family context. The reunion weekend began with traditional family activities, including shared meals, cultural celebrations, and informal conversations that allowed relatives to reconnect and share updates about their lives and work. The atmosphere was festive and warm, reflecting genuine affection among family members despite the competitive undercurrents that had emerged around professional achievements and social status. Friday evening's welcoming dinner provided my first opportunity to observe family dynamics and gauge relatives' awareness of my recent national recognition. Several family members mentioned having seen the magazine article about my award, but their comments reflected continued uncertainty about the significance of the recognition or the nature of my professional work. Cousin Patricia, who worked as a corporate accountant, asked general questions about my real estate business, but seemed surprised when I mentioned the geographic scope of our current development project. Uncle Carlos expressed interest in my community development work but appeared confused about the relationship between affordable housing development and commercial real estate investment. The conversations revealed that family members remained unclear about the distinction between individual property investment and comprehensive development programs that involved millions of dollars in project financing and complex community benefit objectives. Their questions reflected genuine interest, but also demonstrated the persistent gap between my professional reality and their understanding of real estate development. Saturday morning's family business session included presentations from several relatives about their professional achievements and community involvement. Miguel presented his engineering career progression and recent promotion to senior project manager, receiving enthusiastic recognition for his technical expertise and professional advancement. Elena described her medical practice development and research contributions, generating pride and admiration from relatives who valued her commitment to healing and community health. The presentations established a competitive atmosphere that emphasized traditional markers of professional success, including advanced degrees, corporate promotions, and recognition within established professional hierarchy. The focus on conventional career achievements created implicit pressure to demonstrate comparable accomplishments while addressing the family's assumptions about alternative paths to professional success. My presentation was scheduled for Saturday afternoon, allowing time for family members to process the morning presentations and engage in informal discussions about career choices and professional development strategies. The timing provided an opportunity to build upon the established themes while introducing information that would fundamentally alter family perceptions of my professional achievement. The hours before my presentation were marked by increasing nervousness and anticipation about family reactions to learning about the true scope of my business operation. I reviewed my presentation materials repeatedly, ensuring that the information was accurate and comprehensible while preparing for potential questions or challenges from family members who might struggle to accept the reality of my achievement. However, the most significant challenge involved overcoming my own reluctance to challenge family assumptions that had persisted for years. The presentation would require asserting my professional identity and achievements in a context where I had previously accepted dismissive attitudes and uninformed suggestions about my career development. The presentation preparation also involved considering the broader implications of confronting family misconceptions about my capabilities and achievements. The information I would share might create resentment among relatives who had consistently underestimated my potential or offered inappropriate advice based on incomplete understanding of my professional situation. Saturday afternoon arrived with perfect weather and a gathered family eager to continue the celebration of collective achievement and mutual support. The reunion setting provided an ideal backdrop for honest communication about professional development and the diverse paths through which family members had pursued their goals while maintaining connections to shared values and cultural heritage. The stage was set for a presentation that would fundamentally alter family dynamics and establish new foundations for mutual understanding and respect. The opportunity to address years of misconceptions within the supportive context of family celebration provided the ideal circumstances for transforming relationships and establishing authentic communication about professional achievements and strategic vision. The presentation would represent more than a description of business accomplishments. It would demonstrate how my career embodied the immigrant values that had motivated my grandparents while achieving recognition and impact that exceeded the family's collective expectations. The moment had arrived to claim my rightful place within the family's narrative of success while honoring the legacy that had inspired my commitment to community development and social impact. The confrontation that would emerge from this presentation would test every aspect of family relationships and communication patterns that had developed over decades of interaction. However, the foundation established through years of professional achievement and community impact would provide the credibility necessary to transform family perceptions and establish new frameworks for mutual understanding and support. The reunion setting provided the perfect opportunity to demonstrate that success could be achieved through unconventional paths while maintaining commitment to family values and community service. The presentation would prove that my career represented not deviation from family expectations, but rather the fullest expression of the values and aspirations that had motivated our family's journey from immigrants to established American citizens, with meaningful contributions to their communities. The moment of truth arrived at precisely 3:30 on Saturday afternoon, when my mother introduced me to the assembled family with the same well-intentioned but dismissive tone that had characterized her references to my work for years. She described me as someone who had found her own path in real estate and community involvement, suggesting that while my choices had been unconventional, they had ultimately led to meaningful contributions that deserved family recognition and support. The introduction reflected her continued failure to comprehend the magnitude of my professional achievements, despite our recent conversations about the national award and media coverage. Her words positioned my presentation as a good faith effort to acknowledge alternative career paths, rather than recognition of extraordinary business success that had generated industry leadership and substantial community impact. I approached the presentation podium with comprehensive visual materials and a clear strategic objective. Rather than beginning with defensive explanations or attempts to correct family misconceptions, I would demonstrate the scope and significance of my work through systematic presentation of quantifiable achievements and community impact metrics that would speak for themselves. The opening slide displayed a map of the United States with markers indicating the locations of Meridian Development Group's completed and active projects across 12 states. The geographic distribution immediately challenged family assumptions about the local nature of my real estate activities, revealing the multi-state scope of development operations that had positioned our organization as a nationally recognized industry leader. The visual impact was immediate and profound. Family members who had assumed my work involved modest local property investments were confronted with evidence of a business enterprise that spanned the continent and involved coordination of complex projects across diverse markets and regulatory environments. I explained that Meridian Development Group had completed over 800 affordable housing units across 43 properties in 12 states, generating annual rental income exceeding $3.2 million, while creating communities that housed more than 2,000 residents. The scale of operations required sophisticated project management capabilities and access to financing resources that positioned our organization among the largest affordable housing developers in the region. The second presentation component addressed the financial performance and business growth that had characterized our development activities over the past 5 years. I presented detailed revenue projections showing consistent annual growth exceeding 25%, with total organizational assets approaching $12 million and projected expansion that would double our current capacity within 3 years. The financial data revealed that Meridian Development Group's annual revenue exceeded the combined salaries of every family member present at the reunion, including Miguel's engineering income and Elena's medical practice earning. The information fundamentally challenged family assumptions about my financial stability and professional success, while demonstrating the substantial business achievement that had been systematically dismissed or overlooked. The third component focused on community impact metrics that quantified the social benefits generated through our affordable housing development program. I presented data showing that families living in our developments experienced average income increases of 18% within 2 years of residency, children in our communities demonstrated improved educational outcomes, and neighborhood property values increased by an average of 12% following our development activities. The community impact data addressed family values related to social responsibility and community service, demonstrating that my business success had been achieved through work that created meaningful benefits for disadvantaged populations, while contributing to broader economic development and neighborhood revitalization objectives. However, the most significant portion of the presentation involved explaining the national recognition that our organization had received and the industry leadership role that had emerged from our innovative approaches to affordable housing development. I displayed the Excellence in Community Development Award and described the comprehensive evaluation process that had led to national recognition from industry experts and policy leaders. The award explanation included details about the nomination criteria, evaluation procedures, and significance of the recognition within the affordable housing development industry. I emphasized that previous recipients had included major national development companies and established nonprofit organizations, with decades of experience and resources that far exceeded those typically available to regional development firms. The presentation continued with descriptions of my participation in federal advisory committees, speaking engagements at national conferences, and media coverage that had positioned me as a thought leader in affordable housing policy and sustainable development practice. These activities represented recognition of expertise that extended beyond business success to include influence on policy development and industry standards. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.